News Talk 94.5 WPTI, 96.7 FM WTOB. You're listening to The Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. This morning you have Garrett Ray and Brice Payne, and we are talking about easy wins in personal finance. How you doing, Brice?
I'm doing well. Garrett, how are you?
Doing okay. As we sit here and record this, we just got done watching the Super Bowl, so I hope everyone had their fill of the Chiefs and Taylor Swift, and glad everything played out the way that all of the press was wanting it. So,
how many times did they cut to Taylor in that whole game?
Actually, it wasn't as many as I would have thought, but yeah, enough.
I think there were actually more cuts to her than there were penalties in the game. That was probably the least penalized Super Bowl game that I've ever seen.
That's true.
There were 4 or 5 penalties the entire game. One of them pretty huge.
Yeah.
At any rate, it's. I know you were really pulling for the 49ers there, but it is interesting to see another great quarterback in the making, breaking records so young and whatnot. There will come a time, I'm sure, where I am just as frustrated and agitated and had enough of him, just like I did of Tom Brady over the years. But it'll get to that point. So anyway,
of course.
Let's go ahead, Garrett, do our Wealth Guardian service salute for everybody this morning, if you would.
Absolutely, guys. So, as we continue to watch what's going on across the world, we want to keep our service members, men and women, in our hearts and in our minds. We know that it is you that put on the uniform each and every morning when you go out the door, and often leaving your families behind for extended periods of time. Again, just a heartfelt thank you from us here at the Wealth Guardians for everything that you do, and also a shout out to our community first responders as well.
Yeah, and I'll second that. Very good. Thank you, Garrett. Now, as we've started in 2024, in order to help you get to know your Wealth Guardians financial advisor, Garrett and I ask a question of each other every weekend morning, and the question we're going to throw out here, and we can ask this of you as well. Garrett, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten? I didn't give you this question beforehand, so I'll throw it out there for myself first and give you a second to think about it.
Okay.
Brice, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten? And I would say it came from another financial planner years ago who told me to listen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He might have said it something like, shut up and listen, or listen, but the idea was listen. Yeah. And I took that to heart. Sometimes it's just, it's not so much what somebody says, but it's how they say it. Yeah. And that stuck with me. And it's obviously we could use that and play that not just in work, but in every aspect of life. Listen to what the other person is saying, and have that be more important than trying to talk yourself. And that bit of advice really stuck with me, and I think changed me to a certain degree as who I am as a person. So that was the best piece of advice I've ever gotten. Thank you to that advisor out there who put that in my noggin for me. And so, Garrett, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Yeah, I can definitely remember it. So it was when I was in the Navy. It was my operations officer at the battalion. He said something to the effect, and it was a room of us, of junior officers, and he was saying, try as best you can to get comfortable doing the uncomfortable. And for me, what that meant, engineer by degree, numbers guy, relatively introverted, not the hugest fan of public speaking. And here I am behind a microphone now. But
speaking to tens of thousands of people.
Exactly, yeah. But just getting more comfortable in doing things that make you uncomfortable. By going through the process, one, you'll learn a skill that you don't already have, or at least get better on a skill that is, pretty lacking. But then you'll also feel a sense of accomplishment of kind of going through that struggle. And so putting yourselves in uncomfortable situations when it's a conscious choice, I'm not talking about anything like traumatic or anything, but consciously putting yourself out there when you feel uncomfortable is probably a good step.
Step out of your comfort zone as much as you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. All right. Well, good pieces of advice for both of us that we can pass on to others out there as well. Well, let's go ahead and get into our subject here, Garrett. Easy wins in personal finance. So, it's important to eventually get a comprehensive financial plan for yourself. We've made no secret of that over the years here on the Wealth Guardians radio show. But sometimes even just a a few minor adjustments in your portfolio can absolutely make a big difference. So we're going to discuss a few easy places to start.
Sure.
And Garrett, you and I see about 50 portfolios come through the Wealth Guardians offices a year, and we analyze those 9 ways to Sunday and see what we like about them, see what needs to be tweaked about them. And these kind of this subject matter here kind of falls into that category of what are some common things that we see need to be tweaked or kept in mind by somebody as they're preparing to, whether they're preparing to enter retirement or that's still years off. I think these are all kind of relevant. The first one we'll talk about is keeping the right amount in cash.
Yeah.
We do see people come to us who either have very little in cash or way too much in cash. And I would say it's probably the latter that we see more often than the former.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody only says that they only need, you ask them the question directly, how much money do you feel comfortable having in cash? Do you want to see staying there, not making anything, not keeping up with inflation, but they're available for you for the immediate access? And they might give a number, something like, $50,000, whatever.
Sure.
And you look at their portfolio and they've got $200,000 in cash. Right. So that's a good question to start off with, is one of the simpler ones. Keep the right amount in cash. And as I said, one of those main reasons would be it's great. It's safe. You feel comfortable. You feel confident, or at least it's not stressing you out, the money that you have in cash.
Exactly.
You removed it from market risk, but there's a lot of different types of risks out there, and one of those types of risks is inflation risk. So
Absolutely.
Yes, you've removed it from market risk, but you've put it completely into inflation risk.
Yep.
And every day that we've got high inflation, that you've got a large amount sitting in cash, it's losing its buying power. Yep. So you want to keep the right amount in cash. Garrett, what would you add to that, if anything?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different rules of thumb out there that I would say for the most part are fairly good. Our friend Dave Ramsey, he likes to say, start off with $1,000 emergency fund. Pretty good advice. Okay, if you have a bad medical bill or something come along, car repair, that sort of thing, you can pay that off. It's not a stress factor. Then we start getting into the more kind of detailed question. Okay, beyond that $1,000, what's an appropriate level? 3 to 6 months of living expenses for a married couple with, relatively stable jobs. If you're a single person, perhaps you want to extend that to 6 months to a year, just in case you happen to get laid off for an extended period of time. You can bridge that gap. You're right, though, Brice, that we see a lot of people with just bukus of cash, and it becomes kind of a security blanket for them. Perhaps they were burned back in 2008, 2009. They have, memories of that, and they just want to keep that security blanket of cash. Try to always have a purpose for your cash is what, I always suggest, is that, okay, if it's not going to be for everyday living expenses up to X amount of time, okay, if we're parking cash, are we parking it to, we hear this a lot. I'm thinking about buying a new home or possibly a secondary home. Okay, well, how long have you been holding on to this cash? Well, it's been sitting in the bank for 4 years. We haven't found the right home. Okay, that's an opportunity lost. So just making sure that we have a plan for that cash, that's really the only thing that, for me, I want to see that we have a solid plan around the cash that's sitting in our banks.
I agree with it completely. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Wealth Guardians radio show with Doug Ray. It's Garrett and Brice talking to you this morning. And our topic is easy wins in personal finance, things that you want to make sure that you're not overlooking when it comes to creating a retirement plan. The first one we talked about is keeping the right amount in cash. Garrett, the second one we want to talk about is consolidating old 401ks. You and I have brought this up before, and I think you and I both had a similar experience with our wives.
Yes, we did.
My wife and I have been together for 14 years, though we only got married in 2022. But there came a point where I helped her out with her investments, and she had something like 6 old 401ks out there that she never rolled over any of them. And we've got them all consolidated now, but man, that is, talk about not tending your fields. There's so many reasons that you don't want to do that. Just leave them out there sitting there. I would say the first and foremost one, and we've got a lot of topics to cover here, so I don't want to dwell on this one too much, but it's probably one of the more important ones and one of the more common ones we see happen, is your overall retirement plan should have a a theme or a purpose to it. And if you're just keeping a couple of investments in these mutual funds over there at that old 401k and a couple of investments in mutual funds over here, that's like taking a couple of steps from one recipe, flipping the page over in the recipe book to another recipe, taking a couple of steps out of that one and doing it again for a third one and a fourth one, and hoping that whatever you end up concocting is palatable.
Yeah, when it comes out the oven, it's going to taste good.
It's not going to happen. And you want to have one cook in the kitchen and have an idea of what that cook is putting together. And whether that's going to be you or a financial professional who's doing that, you're not going to get it out of just having a bunch of 401ks in various locations. You're going to have overlap here. You're going to have lacking in other sectors or segments. And you really just want to take those 401ks, roll them over to IRAs. You're probably going to be paying less if you're not using mutual funds. At least you're going to be paying less in that IRA than you were in 12B1 fees at your 401k. That's another. Likely, we could go into the cost savings on that as well. But Garrett, anything to add on that one? Because that's a big one.
Yeah, I'll just throw it out quickly. In 2016, I graduated from business school, and one of my professors said something that always stuck with me. He said, you guys going through your careers now, and I was about 30 at the time, likely you will have 6 to 7 career changes. And I'm going back to like our financial world, that's
career changes, not job changes.
Yeah, well, job changes, career changes. Yeah. So that means that in theory, for your average employee out there, there's 6 to 7 potentially orphaned 401ks that they may or may not be managing. And let's face it, if you had a job from 10, 12 years ago, and it's 3 or 4 jobs ago, you probably forgot all about that employer plan. You have no idea what you're invested in. You don't know what its risk profile looks like. You could be invested in something super conservative, and now you have more risk appetite, or you're very risky, and now your risk has changed to more conservative. So there's a plethora of reasons for consolidating your 401ks. One, to just make sure that most of your accounts are under one roof, and you've got a sense of direction of where it's going.
We could do an entire radio show
on just
that one topic right there. So I hate to go past it too quickly, but we are running up to a break here. But we're going to cover a couple of other topics that you want to make sure you're not overlooking as you prepare for retirement. I do want to remind everybody, one of those things that you want to prepare for is having the right tax strategies in place. And speaking of that, we do have our seminar coming up Tuesday, March 5th and Thursday, March 7th. And this is a big one. Tax strategies to reform your retirement. This is key. If you're getting ready to retire and you haven't gone through some type of class learning how taxes are different in retirement than they are for you when you have W-2 income, this is a key thing that you want to at least understand. Maybe you already have a CPA and you have confidence that they're taking care of it all for you, but boy, you want to understand it yourself. So our seminar, there's no cost or no obligation. Tax strategies to reform your retirement. Again, if you're getting ready to retire, you want to understand this subject matter, and we're going to help you understand it to the degree that you should. Tuesday, March 5th, Thursday, March 7th, 6:30 p.m. in Clemens. There is no cost or obligation to attend, but you do have to register. So there's 2 ways for you to register. Give us a call at our phone number, 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409. Or go to our website, thewealthguardians.com. And click on the events tab, tax strategies to reform your retirement. Okay, well, it's time for us to get to the break. In fact, we're running over here. And Garrett, here's the trivia question. Are you ready?
I am.
Give you an easy one this time. Good grief. On February 13th, 2000, the very last Peanuts comic strip was published after 17,897 installments. It was only the day before that the Charlie Brown creator passed away on February 12th, 2000. It was his Charlie Brown Christmas and Halloween specials that paved the way for all the cartoon holiday classics since then. What was the author of Charlie Brown or Peanuts? What was his name?
Okay.
That is our trivia question. Stick around for the answer to it and see if we stumped Garrett on the other side of this break. This is Brice Payne. With me is Garrett Ray. The show is The Wealth Guardians, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And this is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. And this is 96.7 FM WTOB. News Talk 94.5 WPTI. 96.7 FM WTOB. You're listening to The Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. I'm Brice Payne, along with Garrett Ray, and in this second segment, this morning we are continuing our conversation of easy wins in personal finance, the things that you need to make sure you're doing correctly as you prepare for retirement. Now, before we get to our trivia question, I've got 2 questions for you. A, are you looking forward to your retirement? B, do you want to make sure that you're making the best financial decisions for your retirement? I'm sure you answered yes to both those questions, so I've got great news for you. We here at the Wealth Guardians offer a no-cost, no-obligation second opinion of your retirement plan. This includes a deep analysis of your assets, your investment portfolio, your insurance policies, your income needs, your risk tolerance, risk exposure, tax mitigation strategies, legacy goals, and even the fees that you're currently paying. Here's our goal. It's a simple one. We want to help you lower your fees, align your risk, and improve your overall retirement picture so you can indeed retire the job and keep the paycheck. But the ball's in your court. That's how it works. You have to give us a call. We don't know how to contact you. Our phone number is this, 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409. Give us a call or visit us at thewealthguardians.com to set up your financial plan review with Doug, Garrett, and myself today. Do want to remind you, the markets, they aren't going to wait for you. All right, let's go ahead and get to the answer of that trivia question. Garrett, I'll repeat it for you. On February 13th, 2000, that was essentially 14 years ago, the very last Peanuts comic strip was published after 17,897 installments. It was only the day before that the Charlie Brown creator passed away on February 12th, 2000. What was the author's name?
It's got to be Charles Schulz, right?
There you go. You got it right off the bat. Charles Schulz, kind of a household name in Americana
for sure.
history.
Yeah.
And it was his Charlie Brown Christmas and Halloween specials that paved the way for the plethora of Halloween cartoon or Christmas cartoon specials that we see out there.
It's almost a whole genre now.
Yeah, he was 77. He passed away of cancer, and it was a coincidence that he happened to die at that time. It wasn't because he passed away that was the last comic. They had already said that this was the day that the last one was coming out months in advance, and he passed away the day before that. So kind of an interesting, I guess, coinkydink, if you will, there.
I did not know that.
All right, let's go ahead and get back to our subject here. We got a number of them to get through. Easy wins in personal finance. In the first segment, we talked about keeping the right amount in cash and consolidating old 401ks. Let's talk about, Garrett, reconsidering your managed account that has limited management. Really what we're talking about here is the difference between strategic management and tactical management.
Right.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. So, we run into this on occasion where they have a financial advisor, financial planner, and they were drawn up a strategy, let's say 5, 10, maybe even 15 years ago. And that strategy essentially has not changed. And there's kind of 2 different philosophies of financial management. One, strategic management, basically saying we're going to buy a very well diversified portfolio and we're going to buy and hold. And then regardless of what the market does, we're just going to stick to our guns. And over a long time horizon, that does mathematically prove out to be typically the best strategy as far as annual rate of return. That being said, when does tactical management, meaning that we're going to care what the market is doing and start making strategic adjustments to our portfolio based on what the market is doing, that comes into play when someone approaches that retirement window. They're a couple years out from retirement or just retired, and they can no longer afford to absorb those big market drawdowns that do happen on occasion. We've certainly had our share here in memorable past. Meaning that we don't want to expose ourselves to full market risk with a properly structured retirement portfolio. So if you've had a plan drawn up for you and it hasn't been revisited in the past 5 to 10 years, or if you're not sure of what the overall strategy of that advisor and hopefully yourself is regarding that plan, let's certainly take a second look at that, get a plan around it, understand the strategy. Again, everything that we're investing should have a purpose and a plan behind it.
No, absolutely. And really that you hear Garrett and I referring to strategic management versus tactical management. You can look that up to get an idea of the difference there. But strategic management in layman's terms is a buy and hold strategy, which over a 20-year period might work just fine as long as you are prepared to feel the full brunt of the market. When the market turns down 40%, your portfolio and most likely is going to do the same thing. And when you're 30, 40, maybe even 50 years old, that might be an adequate strategy. But
sure, I've got time.
When you're retired or approaching retirement and the market takes a 40% dip, you don't want your portfolio to take a 40% dip. So you would switch over to a type of management called tactical management, which is kind of the opposite of buy and hold. So that's what we mean by that. Let's go ahead and get to the next one here. Think about replacing high expensive mutual funds. Boy, Garrett, one of the things that we do when somebody sits down with us, we go through our 4-meeting planning process. We analyze their current portfolio allocation in a number of different ways, what kind of risks they're taking, what kind of fees they're paying. And one of the things that we look at is how are the mutual funds that they're in or that their advisor has them in, how do they compare, according to Morningstar, to the other mutual funds that are in that same family or same category.
Sure, absolutely.
And there is a lot of surprises out there sometimes for clients that they didn't realize, why on earth am I in this mutual fund to the degree that I am when it ranks number 1,741 in its family out of 1,742 mutual funds in that family.
Right.
So we're not a fan of mutual funds here, Garrett.
Not typically. It always blows people's minds when I tell them, hey, do you know there's actually more mutual funds out there in existence than individual company stocks? Most people are just shocked by that fact.
True words.
But it is true. And obviously there's winners and there's stinkers when we're talking about that many mutual funds. And so we have the software out there to do a deep dive into mutual funds, understand, hey, how's its general performance compared to its peers? Are we talking about in the bottom 5% tile of mutual funds? What are its fees? A lot of people don't understand mutual funds are managed, by the way. There's a mutual fund manager and he or she has a team of analysts that are in theory taking profits when they need to and looking for investments and that sort of thing. They're trading on your behalf. Most people know that. But what type of fee are they charging? Get a lot of blank looks when I bring that up. No one knows. So we basically talk a lot about shifting away from mutual funds into a lower cost option called ETFs, exchange traded funds, which can offer a lot of the same market type performance as some of the best managed mutual funds at a much lower management fee.
Yeah, so fees is one of the reasons that you would want to consider moving out of mutual funds. Another one is that it's very cookie cutter. I've used this analogy before. Let's say that you want to improve your golf game. You can watch YouTube videos all day long on golf instructions, but maybe you go out and pay a golf instructor $300 an hour for tips on personal tips, and he sits you down in the golf room and shows you some YouTube videos. Is that worth the $300 an hour that you're paying? No, but that's kind of the same thing. Mutual funds are really designed for convenience above everything else.
True.
And that is kind of a do-it-yourself investment strategy because you don't have a financial planner to help you out. So if you do have one and they're getting you invested via mutual funds, that to me is kind of, you can do better than that. If you've got a financial professional working for you, they should not be going this cookie cutter route, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions. So think about replacing those high and expensive mutual funds. We can also talk all day long about, Garrett, if you've got, let's say, a blue chip growth mutual fund, that's one of the things that you put in your portfolio.
Sure.
And you need to augment that with some other categories or sectors and whatnot. So you go into a Euro-Pacific fund. You're probably going to have quite a bit of doubling up, overlap on certain stocks and whatnot. So again, if you have a professional advisor who's managing the portfolio, you're probably not going to get that to the same degree. You shouldn't anyway. All right. Here's another big one, and this might be the last one that we've got time for here, Garrett.
Okay.
Analyzing the tax efficiency of your investments.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of folks, when they feel like they've done the right thing, they've been investing, and, they come to us, and a lot of that is in one of a few buckets. You can have your tax deferred accounts, right? Your traditional IRAs, your 401ks, which we like because when we make contributions to them in the year that we do so, we get a tax deduction when we file the following year. But a lot of folks don't realize, or at least they forget, that when they do eventually retire, they've got this, bucket of money that's built up. Well, when you take a distribution from that account, then you have to claim it as income. And so that is essentially it then turns into a taxable account.
Yeah, there's you've got IRAs, you've got Roths, you've not got non-qualified accounts. I can't tell you, Garrett, how many times I see somebody come in here who has all of their accounts with some other firm, and they've got the same exact investments in their IRAs, their Roths, and their non-qualified accounts. Boy, is that a red flag right there, because you want to have your tax-efficient investments inside your non-qualified accounts, have the investments that are trading day in and day out, have those be in your IRA, and have your most growth or risky investments inside your Roth account.
Roth,
That's generally the way that you want to do it. And boy, for somebody who's got all the same thing in their IRAs, their Roths, and their non-qualifieds, talk about a cookie cutter approach. Yeah, and speaking of tax efficiency, I want to bring up here before we cut you loose for the weekend, our seminar coming up, Tax Strategies to Reform Your Retirement. We do this one maybe twice a year, and it's tax season right now, so it's a good time for us to do it. Mark these dates down on your calendar. Tuesday, March 5th. And Thursday, March 7th. Tax Strategies to Reform Your Retirement. It's at 6:30 p.m. at our office in Clemens in the old Broyhill building. There is no cost or obligation to attend, but you do have to give us a call and register at 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409. Or you can register by our website, thewealthguardians.com, and click on the Events tab. Garrett, that's it, buddy.
All right.
We're out of it. All right. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have this week. Thank you for joining us. We hope the rest of your weekend is everything you want it to be. This is Brice Payne, along with Garrett Ray. The show's The Wealth Guardians, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And I want you to remember, sound financial plans do not create themselves. And this is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. And this is 96.7 FM WTOB.